The ideal Greek male, let's see.
Rambunctious, loud, extroverted.
High tolerance for alcohol. Really sexually potent. Gets with a lot of girls. Seems wealthy. But not ostentatiously so.
The classic sorority girl is someone who is white, has a lot of money, is really pretty, dresses well.
With some sororities are like girly girls. We are mean girls.
At Dartmouth, people are generally identified using their affiliation as a primary descriptor of them.
You have to ask yourself the question, does high school never end? Do people never grow up?
The way Dartmouth is set up, I really can't imagine having a full Dartmouth experience if I didn't at least try out being Greek.
I was afraid that if I wasn't affiliated, I would feel left out.
60% of the student body is affiliated?
I think the statistics are upwards of 60% of eligible members are Greek.
Such a large portion of Dartmouth's eligible student body, I think it's like 60 or 70%.
High in the New Hampshire hills, firmly embedded in the handsome Connecticut Valley, is Dartmouth College.
Look at it carefully. Find out what goes on here, and if it meets your needs.
National Lampoon's Animal House.
It is traditional for carnivals to have reigning queens. The winner is in for a social whirl which will leave her breathless by the end of the weekend.
Dartmouth College. Hanover, New Hampshire's Ivy League institution has been around for almost 250 years, so it comes as no surprise that the college's Greek system is similarly entrenched in its history, celebrating 175 years this past spring. Just like the college, there are many problematic aspects to the institution of Greek life at Dartmouth. With 68% of the eligible student body involved with Greek life, it's often difficult for students to escape the issues plaguing our community. We spoke with 5 students from various walks of life to explore these issues further.
Before I came to Dartmouth, I would have said there's no way that I would go within a 10 feet radius of a fraternity. The idea, when someone says frat, I think of a southern Greek house. But being here, it's not the truth. It's a stereotype because I did end up joining a Greek house here.
For me personally, my brothers were horrified that I was even rushing because my brother went to a southern school and there Greek life dominated everything. And so when I told him I was rushing, he was like, who are you? What you're selling into a system that perpetuates privilege. And I actually had a lot of trouble rushing for that reason. And I do believe that our system is different, but in general I would find that the classic Greek stereotype is, rich, a lot of time, a lot of money, and yeah.
So speaking to the stereotypes, I definitely think that exists of a very masculine, binge drinking heavy culture. When I think of a female stereotype sorority woman here, I have a wider range than what I do have of a male. Most girls that I do know are affiliated, and most girls aren't the same. I have different human beings who are girls. So in my mind, all these different girls have fit in to the Greek system. So I don't really have a stereotypical image of a girl within this Greek system at Dartmouth.
Perhaps especially for freshmen trying to fit in, the overall nature of the Greek system does suggest that one should try to conform to a certain type of masculinity in particular, let's say, because I think femininity is much more broadly constructed in the sorority system than masculinity is in the fraternity system. For anyone trying to dismantle gender dichotomies, dismantle heteronormativity. I mean, it obviously represents a massive obstacle in that it completely normalizes a certain social construction of gender.
One of the gender norms that I think sororities do, like, especially propagate, is that they take themselves too seriously. Like right now, for example, my news feed on Facebook, it's just a bunch of girls changing their profile pictures and making these absurd captions out of their Greek letters, and I just read them and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've probably ever seen in my whole life. And like, I mean, it's funny, and I think there's obviously they know it kind of, I think sometimes they do it with an element of irony, but to me it's like, I feel like the word in America that I've learned for this kind of behavior is extra. So I think it really is just extra, and I think it kind of also like propagates a stereotype against girls that they take stupid things too seriously, girls can't be taken seriously because they do things like that.
I do find that I've had some friends who've already changed, like, to fit into their stereotype, and then I've had other friends who have refused to change and therefore felt left out. One of my best friends who's in a frat, he acts so different now. He's just like, you can tell he wants to like feel welcome and be like someone that they all like a lot. But I'm like, okay, if you're changing who you are to be liked, then they like essentially a fake version of you. Like, that's not who you are. So is that what you really want? So it's a weird dynamic where I think there is a pressure to fit in, and if you don't fit in, then sometimes you will feel left out. But on the other hand, we like supposedly encourage like having different personalities, but I think it is hard when a lot of people are alike.
Like most colleges, Dartmouth's Greek system enforces many gender roles, encouraging its members to conform to these hypergendered stereotypes. But just how does this conformity start? With the rush process in the fall of students' sophomore years. This can be a pivotal moment in many Dartmouth students' lives.
So thinking about my future at Dartmouth, as a freshman, you don't have those constraints on you. No one else is Greek. You're all in the same boat, and there's a strong sense of camaraderie, I think, in that, in which you're going to different houses, you don't feel bound anywhere. Whereas now, during the rush process, I was constantly thinking of sophomore summer, or my senior year, my junior year, and having this be an integral part of the social scene, even though maybe I wasn't 100% in support of everything that was happening, I still felt that it was important that I have that.
Yeah, I think by the end of my first year I was kind of sure that the whole scene wasn't for me. The biggest reason is that I was aware of like a lot of these sexual violence and like the sexual assault cases that are associated with fraternities, and yes, people are like, not all guys do it. I felt like if I were affiliated with a body that engages in, or hasn't had a history of engaging with that kind of behavior, and probably still does, I would somewhat be complicit. And since sexual violence is something that I strongly stand against, I just didn't want that kind of guilt, and it would have really hurt my conscience if I were affiliated.
Before and after Rush, I feel like the parts of me that I like very believe strongly maybe start to wither.
That was one of my fears, was that if I joined a house that I didn't actually fit into, that I would change and become like that house.
It just feels acceptable to say and act and do different things that I wouldn't otherwise.
I didn't want to change like who I was to fit into my sorority. Like, my goal to join sorority was like to meet upper class women and to grow as a person, but not to change like the base personality who I am, like pretend to be someone else. Because I do find that I've had some friends who have already changed, like to fit into their stereotype, and then I've had other friends who have refused to change and therefore felt left out.
But this feeling of being left out isn't exclusive to just Greek life members that don't conform. In many ways, the Greek system is exclusive towards minorities, people of lower socioeconomic status, and even women in general.
All systems which choose their members are at some level based on exclusion and exclusivity. The Greek system is no exception.
Being a person of color, being not of the main ethnic group or anything, all those things really do work against you.
All the houses are white dominated, and I don't think that's great. I think it's really hard for a minority to break into the Greek system, and if you do, a lot of times you're the quote unquote like model minority, like you're the really pretty Asian or black person or Hispanic person, like you are white passing, something like that. I don't think that the Greek system does a great job of being inclusive of minorities. I think we pretend that we do, but I don't think that we actually do.
It's hard. It's when you're not that subset, you feel like it requires even more energy because it's a space that wasn't exactly built for you.
It's way harder. It's 4 times more likely for an Asian woman to drop rush than a white person. Like, that's a fact. That's scary. That's not okay. That just shows that this system does not do a good job for minorities. And just looking at my friends even, I would say almost all my minority friends dropped rush. I was one of the few that didn't, and I was really lucky that I got the one that I wanted. And I found that a lot of times if you didn't know upperclassmen women, it was so hard on you to rush if you're a minority. It's just like, because people aren't going to speak up for you, and if your first instinct is what's based on looks, you're more likely to favor someone that looks like yourself.
The socioeconomic issue is even more hard. I think even when the greater institution of Dartmouth isn't even set up for you to succeed, a smaller institution within that could try, but in this case I don't think it is. Even the concept of financial aid within houses, I think it's just hard because you can say whatever you want to say, but if you're on financial aid within a house, it might feel different personally, and I feel like I'm using the space without fully being a member or fully deserving of it because I'm receiving this thing. It would be different if across the board no one paid anything. Then you're on the same tier as everyone else. But all those concepts which haven't been dealt with on any level, college, university, high school, the Greek houses haven't got it right yet either.
The Greek system creates like a male-dominated hierarchy. So by having these, like, sororities are important that way. They kind of counterbalance that. I think it is a little dangerous because maybe not dangerous is the right word, but it's not a great phenomenon having male-dominated social spaces because it does like help perpetuate privilege by doing that. Because the simple fact is, if you don't experience oppression, you won't necessarily think of it. Like, who's gonna think of that? Like, I'm not gonna recognize my own privilege in everything that I do, and like I have a lot of privilege, like I'm here. And so I think if you have male-dominated social spaces, like they often will recognize, like, oh, like these small comments make a woman really uncomfortable. Oh, like these comments are a little racist, maybe. Like it's hard to notice that when you don't feel that oppression.
I think it's just inherently problematic that the male houses are open and the girls come to those houses, whether it be for tails or whatever event. And so just that basic premise is that I am a man with the means and you, a female, are coming into my space and drinking my alcohol and playing with the things that are in my house, in my space. I just think that premise leads to a lot of different consequences.
I think the female-dominated social space is a great idea. I think it's really good. I think it empowers women and it helps, because like when you're an underclassman woman, like you don't really get to meet a lot of upperclassmen ever. So I think that's really important about the sororities, is that you do get to meet a lot of upper class women.
I think the problem of it goes back to, at a sorority or a fraternity, the people who are shaping the place are singular. So if you have all male making an all male space, then it's never going to fully accommodate women. You have to have women not only going there, but back further at the step where the space is being formed.
My hope for Dartmouth is that by the time I graduate, or just as the years progress, that like the number of Greek life stops being such a dominant force here and stops forming the hegemony here.
I would like for it to remain in place. I think, for me at least, even as someone who's unaffiliated, it's a fundamental part of what Dartmouth is for its alumni. That said, I can empathize with the arguments of people who want to tear it down, but I don't necessarily sympathize with their feelings.
I don't know, I guess like recognizing your privilege, recognizing that like your bias. That would probably like be the first step. To include all minorities, like I don't know how that would be done. That's just like an ideal world to me, like where it's just like you stop judging someone just on like what they look like.
I think the most important thing is that all people have a discussion in what it looks like. As long as Dartmouth continues to accept a wide-ranging variety of people of wide-ranging interests, beliefs, then those people should have a say in whatever happens here. So having people of color, of immigrant status, of undocumented status, of different genders and religions, and all those things. I think everybody, if everyone has a voice in what it looks like, it will be made for those people, and everyone will be happy in the long term. But for the future of it, I don't know.